Mindset Michele TV show. We're so excited for you to be joining us again today. And today we've got yet another extra special guest for you. We have the fabulous Gunnar Habitz. Hello, Gunnar.
Hey, Michele. Nice to be part of your show.
It's so fabulous having you here, Gunnar. And for those of you that haven't heard of Gunnar before, and I'm sure most of you have, because he's very, very active on social media. And this stems partly from having lived in 29 countries and being a real true global citizen. He came to Australia in 2016 and has worked in a number of different roles, and more recently with Hootsuite. But I also know Gunnar from the work that he's done in his LinkedIn profile programs, and also many of the other social media and networking things that I know that you're very active in, Gunnar. But there's so much more to your background and your global experience and your global self. Do you want to explain to the people a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, happy to do so. So then, as you mentioned already, I have been living in a couple of countries. So I grew up in northern Germany, where actually it's so windy like the weather in Sydney that sometimes we speak a bit faster, but I learned to not do this here in Australia. So then I moved to Switzerland, coming from the IT side as a consultant with HP. And then I moved to product marketing and always have been interested in how technology can improve the lives that we have, being it in a B2C environment, selling directly to consumers, or in the infrastructure side. I really enjoyed that. Moved into sales, and then I led a region of 29 countries in Central Eastern Europe, out of Switzerland and out of Czech Republic, where my wife came from. And that got me a quite international background. And I so much enjoyed to learn about different cultures. But just one day, this journey was over when HP split into two pieces. And I had the chance for 3 months, January, February, March, the best weather down under, to explore New Zealand and Australia. And basically 3 days in Sydney within the 3 months made it. And I realized that most companies who would have a New Zealand-based position are actually based in Sydney, not in Melbourne, and not necessarily in Auckland or Wellington. So that was a starting point to put the mindset on, why not to explore this fantastic side of the world?
What a journey, and one that I've heard many times from accidental people that came to Australia for a day and moved here for a lifetime because of our beautiful beaches and really fabulous lifestyle. And with that experience then, I've lived in about 4, maybe 5 different countries, and so it is different, you know, literally setting up life from scratch. And I admire your resilience for doing that, and for moving different time zones, different part of the world. What then do you think success means to you? What does it mean to you in terms of family, work, career now?
So I would define success as the position and advancement on the journey towards personal growth. So the journey to yourself that starts with what life can give us into how can I further contribute. So that for me is more into giving the longer we are in our career journey. And also, of course, personally, how I can serve for my family, that we have an exciting life, but not just for us, but also for the people around us. And this actually is for me what success means, not just a commercial number.
And it's a wonderful viewpoint, and one that people like yourself that I've obviously had very exciting times and very challenging times, and times where, like, I can't remember the number, is it 17 books that you're up to now that you've written?
22, 17 books.
22. So that type of resilience and that type of keeping and going, I mean, many people want to write a book but find it hard to even write their first book, but 17 books is very, very admirable, as is moving to different countries and starting in different roles. What sort of mindset elements and suggestions do you have for people watching that you think may help them making those same sort of major life decisions or finishing tasks like writing a book and getting to the end?
So let me answer this in 2 parts. On the book side of things, the majority of the books that I publish mostly at German publishers in the travel industry, like Competition to Lonely Planet, these type of books. It's basically like project business, and that helps for the corporate role as well, to be able to manage finishing a task on time, learn from it, and maybe take this experience as a reflection further. So that is that side of thing from a mindset point of view, to know, yes, I can make that. And even when the book has 288 pages, yes, it will work. And the big surprise, when it gets published later and I have it in my hands, I read it and I wonder, who wrote that? So that is a big surprise, that while you're doing things, you might not be happy. It doesn't sound so well. It's maybe not perfect. But then reflecting it also when talking to others is actually quite a good thing. So that was the book side on the mindset.
And I think that that's really a good reflection about sometimes when we're in the journey and we're going through it, and it can seem like it's never going to end. I know there were days when I was writing my book, one of my books, it felt like it was never going to end. But then once you've got it in your hand and you're handing it out to people, and you're kind of like the proud parent of the book, that reflection then and that feedback from people, I guess it is a little bit like giving birth, because you forget about the pain that came before it once you have that book child in your hand.
Yeah, that's true. I had a lovely book launch of one book called Leaders of Influence, which I had in the place where I'm sitting today, which is the Castle Boutique Hotel here in Sydney. And we had a lovely book launch where we told the stories. It was stories of 6 leaders who shared their experience. And I had a story, my first fictional story I ever wrote, of a person called Daniel in a software company in customer success, who moved up from an accidental manager without even wanting that to become an intentional leader. And that's a story I published. And the reflection in such a book launch really makes it. But one thing I didn't know at that time, that was 2 years before I joined Hootsuite, where I have here the leader of customer success. His name is Daniel. It's quite funny. I took it in advance.
Oh, isn't that funny how life imitates art at times, and that's so true, that many people that may be technically skilled in some areas do become accidental leaders and need to learn those skill sets to become intentional leaders. And I like that distinction with the words, accidental and intentional. That's a really, really interesting way of framing it. And you mentioned that there was a second part to the intentional or mindset.
Yeah, thank you. The second one is when you normally think you know a lot about it and people know you, the best way is to go in a place where nobody knows you. So I came to Australia after this more touristic experience and thought, let's give it a try. But how can you try this so far away? So then what I've done, I booked myself an advanced diploma of leadership and management at the Australian Institute of Management as a golden standard of leadership in our country. Research about it before, and I came for 2 months to attend some of the classes. Nobody knew me. Nobody actually cared about my story from far away. Why does it bother to anyone here? And I realized I've been one of the more exotic people coming from Switzerland in already this lovely melting pot that we call Sydney. By the way, Michele, it's not a melting pot. Actually, I think Sydney, and of course Melbourne as well, with globalization, a melting pot would mean we're all the same at the end. We buy the same stuff all over the world. I think Sydney is more of a salad bowl, because you have cucumber in it, more expensive these days. You have tomato, you have lettuce, all of this together, but the taste comes in the combination. And that's what I explored here. And my mindset was not to tell all them about my story, but to properly, actively listen as a born introvert to the listening I have, and then not to immediately give recommendations and judgment, because how can I? It doesn't matter how it works in Europe, but to really, in this way, to learn about a place, to get into the stories, to introduce people together who should maybe know each other, but don't, and I can make these connections happen. So therefore, one of my books in the future I want to write is called Collect or Connect. I'm not for a number. I really would like to have proper relationships, this mutual interest. And that is a mindset that came on this journey.
I can so very much relate. Probably the most unusual place I lived in was in Chile when I was working there for a year. And I really hear you, Gunnar. There I did it again, Gunnar. I really hear you, Gunnar, about listening and understanding that people do things differently in different countries, and there's not right or wrong, but through those listening skills, you learn so much more, and you appreciate and understand how different people approach things. In fact, one of my funniest stories around this was in Mexico City, and I was crossing this road, and it was huge. There was probably like 8 lanes of traffic, and being Mexico City, people were just walking in amongst the traffic. I went up to this complete stranger and I was terrified, and I just kind of held onto his arm and followed him for exactly that reason. I didn't know how to cross through all of that traffic, but somebody that was from there would know when the cars were going to stop, when they were going to accelerate. And so by being with literally walking next to this gentleman, he helped me to cross that road. And I think, that's a bit of an extreme thing, crossing a road, that in everyday life when you're living in a new city. And I really love that salad bowl analogy of living in Sydney rather than a melting pot, which I agree sounds like we're all melted together and boiled down. The salad bowl conjures up those wonderful images of we all have our uniqueness, and we bring those wonderful flavours to the combination of the taste of this very global lifestyle that we live here.
Yeah, exactly. You summarized it very, very well. And I enjoy this. And in various roles, it really makes sense. So from a corporate standpoint, here at Hootsuite and before at HB and at Keep It Safe and at Noggin, my 2 journeys here in Australia, I'm normally working with partners. So this means in old way of saying would be the middleman to sell between a customer and a vendor, because I strongly believe that 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Because one person, or let's say one organization, might already know the end customer quite well, and they might be the better way to serve the problems with the solution that we have here at Hootsuite compared to directly. So then, not always, but often. So then my role is to find these mutual partnerships and make that happen, but not necessarily like the traditional IT in a one-way street from vendor to distributor to reseller to customer, but more about also 2 ways, because we can leverage and benefit from the power of and knowledge from social media agencies and consultants that can help the other way around. So that can shape a lot, because at the end we have only one mission here at Hootsuite, that is to champion the power of human connection. And we have chosen social media as one of the best ways in order to reach this large amount of people.
And I really love, and you reflect so well, because I think everything from your background about the power of people and the power of connections, and you reflected it so well there, that Hootsuite and the journey that you're on with them is very much around this as well. So the relationships, the work, everything comes back to building those teams and those connections to have like that. I'm going to keep using the salad bowl analogy, but to have that salad bowl where everybody brings their technical skills and their unique skills, personal and interpersonal as well. And from that, you then work out the best solutions for everyone. A very different sales kind of model to a traditional model, and also reflecting very much that shift from older days of, win-lose to the win-win, and very practically having it so that if I grow, you grow, and everybody understands that even if we're competitors, if I'm killing you off as a competitor, it doesn't help the market. So I want you to thrive as a competitor. Because the more competitors, the more stronger the market. So all of these different elements have really undergone those mindset shifts that we're seeing play out so beautifully in the market.
Yeah, and you mentioned this with the competition. I mean, on one side, it's rather market companions, Because if there would be only one company creating something, might be not that much of innovation compared to a healthy marketplace of a couple of innovative companies who can then also come to different type of solutions in that whole area. So I see it more from a completing point of way. So it's always a question by when you are maybe too early to have a solution, when you are maybe too late on the market, so that also exists. But to really find that way, it's a good thing. So if I take as an example, the idea in the GFC to manage social media channels for an agency under one platform, the need might be there, but there was no solution. So then Ryan Holmes created this, and that became then Hootsuite. So being the first one. And being the first one is fantastic to set up the scene for what can be done together. So then we've been happy that we can help also the social media channels, be it LinkedIn, Twitter, recently TikTok, also to shape their strategies and to ensure that customers can really have a holistic view on their way, how they can run social media in their organic ways, in their paid ways, and how they combine it, particularly the return on investment, and up to a sentence that I read when I joined Hootsuite, which was, social media should have a seat at the board table instead of being a little disciplined within marketing. And that exact board table, that's why I'm sitting now in the boardroom.
I really like that. And I like that, again, that ambition and that changing the salad bowl so that, you know, your salad mixture is not always the same at a boardroom table. And I think organizations that understand this and understand the power of social media, all you need to do is look at the millions that people are making through mediums like TikTok nowadays to realize that one of the things I'm excited about working in technology as well is that all of these games and rules around the games are changing. So even, you know, doing social media in a certain way to get a certain audience has changed. These types of mediums of doing interviews like this to put out on the TV show is a new medium, and it will keep growing. And then in a few years' time, there'll be a different medium. Again, we might even be all holograms talking to each other.
Yeah, if you look what innovation really made, it's fantastic. And the reason, one of the reasons for me to come here to Australia is that many vendors, including Hootsuite, treat Asia Pacific, particularly Australia, as a test market where is a high level of autonomy. We can test things out, which then can be successful for the rest of the world. Doesn't fit always. We might not have the fastest internet on the planet, but in many other areas, it works. You do a test. We have, together with New Zealand, we have 30 million people. If it's in English, you can draw conclusions fast enough. If it works, put in the rest of the world. If not, not much happened. And this mindset of trying something a little bit differently, utilizing the diverse workforce that are here in Australia, that I think that sets a quite good common ground representative for many places in the world. And that's what really drives us here.
And I think that that's also interesting. You raise a good point. I think in Melbourne, it's the largest Greek population outside of Greece living in Melbourne. So if you were wanting to develop something, for example, for the Greek market back in Greece, you would test the market in Melbourne. So I agree. We are very lucky down here that we're such people that take up technology very quickly and adapt very quickly to different things. Coming back to you personally, and you know, you're married to somebody from the Czech Republic, your family are back in Switzerland, and technology has shifted how people connect and interrelate nowadays. What do you think in terms of being able to keep up? Because some people feel overwhelmed and struggle a little bit with all of these changes. What do you think for you has been part of that success to keep that mindset fresh about, you know, this was a little bit challenging today, but I know that in terms of the bigger picture, it will get better, or I'll learn how to use that technology. It'll just take me a little bit of time. What's been your mindset around that?
So my view here is regarding a different type of ways how I can talk to people. So in the past, it was obvious you had the phone and then you got the mobile phone. And if you want to write something short, you would have SMS. Now we have maybe 15 different ways how you can act. So what I made me clear, depending the person who want to talk to, how I normally reach them. And lucky enough, our phone connection here back to Europe is really good, as if I would stand next to them. So that helped me to be in connection with my parents, for example, who are not necessarily all on social media. But of course, the tricky thing is when I say I work in social media, I share my life a lot on Facebook, Instagram, what's interesting for others. But then I need to pay attention not to miss out those people who decide not to be active there, which is not a question of being old or younger, but rather the personal preference, which is fine. So then I need to pay attention that I reach out fast enough, understanding I'm the one who's remote here, not they are remote. So then it's, I rather go and share something. So that is for me, the way we can easily get forgotten when we are out of sight. So it's worth checking in and add another perspective onto the challenges that we have when we got the bushfires here, the floods, COVID, we got everywhere. I couldn't get to see my family in Europe for 3 years. So these are things where many of us struggled and get through. So in my mindset, I try to be available, reachable regarding time zone, regardless time zone, doesn't matter, but at least also to offer help and be curious what's going on there.
I love it because you mentioned as well about how you were more of an introvert before as well. So I think that helps to give you that insight into, you know, people that don't necessarily want to share as much online or use technology as much. And again, not to make them right or wrong, but just that's their preference. And I really love that point that you're making around keeping in contact with them and being available when they're available. I know especially for older people that don't necessarily want to use the technology or don't trust the technology still in some ways. And even, I shouldn't just say older people, younger people as well that don't trust, you know, the data collection, etc., around some of the technology. So I really applaud that you're aware of that and that your mindset keeps you aware of that and helps you again to come back to this wonderful theme today around that social connection and the connectedness, and then Hootsuite and whatever else it might be are the tools that we use, but that's today's tools, and then there'll be tomorrow's tools. And I love also how you shared how it was born out of a need at the time. And I think it back to, you know, Zoom and the popularity. This is being recorded through Zoom. And, you know, that came out at a time that just seemed to, you know, the stars are aligned, and 90% of people now use Zoom outside of offices. So I think that this is part of that human condition, especially around technology, where when people have a need, somebody very smart out there goes and creates the answer to those solutions. But again, not everybody would take up those solutions. But that general growth and change in technology and change in how we relate to people online and offline is something that we need to keep aware of going forward.
Yeah, and often people have then, after a while, hundreds, thousands of people that they are connected to. But it's not just a question of being a number. Often I get the question, should I have more quantity or more quality in my network? So if we change only one letter, we can get it right. I'm looking not for quantity or quality. I'm looking for quantity of quality. I didn't invent that. I learned it from my executive sales coach, Rahul Kumar. And that really works well, because if I look into the large enough number of people where I can have good relationship with, being it personal, private, in business, of course, that gets us the density of people where I really am curious. I would like to care about them and I can learn from them. And I learned also yesterday here in this room, actually, a sentence from the general manager of the hotel who said, "A day without laughter and learning is a day wasted." So he added the learning into a famous sentence that already has been there before. And that is exactly what these human connections can actually provide when we give it the time and the right mutual level of tools needed to develop and foster these relationships.
And what lovely sentiments, all about the tools and connecting the human relationships. And I think, if anything, over the last few years, and you rightly point out in Australia that we've had floods and fires and COVID, you know, we've had a lot of natural disasters as well as health ones. And that connectedness and that need for connection has become even stronger and even greater. And I love those nuances around quality and quantity and laughter and learning. I think these key themes and points are really important for going forward. And I know we could keep chatting for much, much longer, but Gunnar, even when I'm saying it now, I'm thinking, did I say it right? Even if I've said it right, sorry. Gunnar, how can people get hold of you?
Well, that is, in general, it's easy using LinkedIn. That is my favorite social media channel. So when my name is Gunnar Habitz, then I'm actually there. So linkedin.com/in/Gunnar Habitz, and on Twitter as well. I have a website, gunnarhabitz.com.au.
Fabulous. And one of my other favorite questions is to ask people, if you had some advice, and being somebody that's lived in a few different countries, had a number of different roles, and really, you know, you've reinvented, and I like that term reinvention, because it does reflect that whole creating yourself anew, not just from moving countries, but in different roles that you've held and different hats that you've put on. What advice then, I'd be fascinated, what sort of advice might you give to your younger self?
That advice would be curious every day, particularly about the world around you that you normally don't see. That means travel as early as you can. So I met recently with a schoolmate when I went to Germany, and said, yeah, when we retire, then we will travel. Health might not help. Some countries are not there anymore. It might not be safe anymore. So to my younger self, travel early with open eyes in the way of learning from other cultures that can help you throughout your own life.
What wonderful, wonderful advice. I think I wholeheartedly agree. I've spent many years overseas myself, including that time living in Chile and visiting Mexico, I mentioned. And I wholeheartedly agree that the experiences of meeting other people, and like you were sharing today about listening and really hearing about different cultures and different ways that people do things, is really very, very important, and important not just for the connections with others, but also for that connection inside yourself and to learn more about yourself. But Gunnar, it's been an incredible journey. I feel like we've only touched the surface, because there's so many different areas around the books and your journey to being here, and your plans for the future with your LinkedIn work and other work. But for now, I'd love to say thank you again for coming on the show today. It's been a real pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Michele.
Fabulous. And well, what an amazing guest again we've had today. And it's been such a wonderful journey to hear a different lens and a different viewpoint, a slightly different angle again today about what we can learn about making a mindset for success. And today's definitely been a theme of connection, connecting with others and learning for others. But for now, it's time to say goodbye. So from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.